"All right," he said. "Tell them to come help me and take the things out of the boxes." Jose Arcadio, the older of the children, was 14. He had a square head, thick hair, and his father's character. Although he had the same impulse for growth and physical strength, it was early evident that he lacked imagination. He had been conceived and born during the difficult crossing of the mountains before the founding of Macondo, and his parents gave thanks to the heaven when they saw that he had no animal features. Arellano, the first human being to be born in Macondo, would be 6 years old in March. He was silent and withdrawn. He had wept in his mother's womb and had been born with his eyes open. As they were cutting the umbilical cord, he moved his head from side to side, taking in the things in the room and examining the faces of the people with fearless curiosity. Then, indifferent to those who came close to look at him, he kept his attention concentrated on the palm roof, which looked as if it were about to collapse under the tremendous pressure of the rain. Ursula did not remember the intensity of that look again until one day when little Aureliana, at the age of 3, went into the kitchen the moment she was taking a pot of boiling soup from the stove and putting it on the table. The child, perplexed, said from the doorway, "It's going to spill." The pot was firmly placed in the center of the table, but just as soon as the child made his announcement, it began an unmistakable movement towards the edge, as if impelled by some inner dynamism, and it fell and it broke on the floor. Ursula, alarmed, told her husband about the episode, but he didn't interpret it as a natural phenomenon. That was the way he always was, alien to the existence of his sons, partly because he considered childhood as a period of mental insufficiency, and partly because he was always too absorbed in his fantastic speculations. But since the afternoon, when he called the children in to help him unpack the things in the lavatory, he gave them his best hours. In the small separate room, where the walls were gradually being covered by strange maps and fabulous drawings, he taught them to read and write and do sums, and he spoke to them about the wonders of the world, not only where his learning had extended, but forcing the limits of imagination to extremes. It was in that way that the boys ended up learning that in the southern extremes of Africa there were men so intelligent and peaceful that their only pastime was to sit and think, and that it was possible to cross the Aegean Sea on foot by jumping from island to island, all the way to the port of Saloconia. Those hallucinating sessions remained printed on the memories of the boys in such a way many years later. The second before the regular army officer gave the firing squad the command to fire, Colonel Arellano Buendia saw once more that the warm March afternoon on which his father had interrupted the lesson in physics and stood fascinated, with his hand in the air and his eyes motionless, listening to the distant pipes, drums, and jingles of the gypsies, who were coming to the village once more, announcing the latest and most startling discovery of the sage's nymphs. They were new gypsies, young men and women who knew only their own language, handsome specimens with oily skins and intelligent hands, whose dances and music sowed a panic of apparatus joy through the streets, with parrots painted in all colors reciting Italian arias, and a hen who laid 100 of golden eggs to the sound of a tambourine, and the tainted monkey who read minds, and the multi-use machine that could be used at the same time to sew on a button and reduce fevers, and the apparatus to make a person forget his bad memories, and the publicity to lose time, and 1,000 more inventions so ingenious that Jose Arcadio Buendia must have wanted to invent a memory machine so that he could remember them all. In an instant they transformed the village. The inhabitants of Macondo found themselves lost in their own streets, confused by the crowded fair, holding a child by each hand as to not lose him in the tumult, bumping into acrobats with gold-gapped teeth and jugglers with 6 arms, suffocated by the mingled breath of manure and sandals in the crowd exhaled. Jose Arcadio Buendia went about everywhere like a madman, looking for Melquiades so that he could reveal to him the infinite secrets of that fabulous nightmare. He asked several gypsies who did not understand his language. Finally, he reached a place where Melquiades used to set up his tent, and he found a talcumum and medium who in Spanish was hawking a syrup to make oneself invisible. He had drunk down a glass of amber substance in one gulp as Jose Arcadio Buendia elbowed his way through the absorbed group that was witnessing the spectacle and was able to ask his question. The gypsies wrapped him in a frightful climate of his look before he turned into a puddle of perstineal and smoking pitch over which the echo of his reply still floated. Melquiades was dead. Upset by the news, Jose Arcadio Buendia stood motionless, trying to rise above his affliction, until the group dispersed. Called away by the utter artifices, the puddle of taciturn Armenian evaporated completely. Other gypsies confirmed later on that Melquiades has in fact succumbed to the fever on the beach at Singapore, and that his body had been thrown into the deepest part of the Java Sea. The children had no interest in the news. They insisted that their father take them to see the overwhelming novelty of the sages of Memphis that was being advertised at the entrance of a tent that, according to what was said, had belonged to King Solomon. They insisted that so much Jose Arcadio Buendia paid the 30 reals and led them into the center of the tent, where there was a giant with a hairy torso and a shaved head, with a copper ring in his nose and a heavy iron chain on his ankle, watching over a pirate chest. When it was opened by the giant, the chest gave off a glacial exhalation. Instead, there was only an enormous, transparent block with infinite internal needles, in which the light of the sunset was broken up into colored stars. Disconcerted, knowing that the children were waiting for an immediate explanation, Jose Arcadio Buendia ventured a murmur. "It's the largest diamond in the world." "No," the gypsy countered, "it's ice." Jose Arcadio Buendia, without understanding, stretched out his hand towards the cake, but the giant moved it away. "5 reals more to touch it," he said. Arcadio Buendia paid them and put his hand on the ice and held it there for several minutes, as his heart filled with fear and jubilation at the contact with mystery. Without knowing what to say, he paid 10 reals more so that his sons could have the prodigious experience. Little Jose Arcadio refused to touch it. Aureliano, on the other hand, took a step forward and put his hand on it, withdrawing immediately. "It's boiling," he exclaimed, startled, but his father paid no attention to him, intoxicated by the evidence of the miracle. He forgot that at the moment, about the frustration of his delirious undertakings, and Melquiades' body, abandoned to the appetite of the squids. He paid another 5 reals, and with his hand on the cake, as if giving testimony on the Holy Scriptures, he exclaimed, "This is the great invention of our time."